China has figured out ways to inflict economic pain on U.S. businesses.
China has crafted a calculated strategy designed to inflict real, lasting pain on the U.S. economy. What happens next could change everything, not just trade, but the very future of America's place in the world. This isn't just a trade dispute. It's a strategic assault designed to break the backbone of the American economy and cripple the MAGA vision. It started with steel and aluminum tariffs, a bold strike to defend American industry.
New tariffs on steel and aluminium imports to the US kicked in a few hours ago, now doubling to 50%.
But such drastic measures come with risks that could ripple far beyond the factory floor. Is China's rise the single greatest threat to Trump's America, one that could unravel decades of US economic dominance and the MAGA dream itself? This isn't just a challenge. It's a ticking time bomb, one that could shatter the American dream forever. China's response has already hit critical sectors like aerospace, with retaliatory moves that send shockwaves through U.S. industry.
Earlier, Beijing said it had ordered the country's airlines to suspend deliveries of Boeing aircraft in response to the Trump administration's imposition of massive tariffs on Chinese goods.
These escalating tensions reveal a deeper truth. The world's economic balance is shifting beneath our feet. China's explosive growth in manufacturing is a challenge to America's industrial future. According to the United Nations, by 2030, China is projected to control 45% of global manufacturing. That's an amazing leap from just 6% in 2000. China has pulled off one of the most rapid and vast industrial expansions in modern history in this very short time span. This massive shift in global manufacturing sparks deep concern in America, as the prospect of losing its industrial edge becomes a growing national fear. The same UN data shows the US share will shrink to only 11% by 2030. That's a dramatic fall from 25% at the turn of the century. The heartland of American industry, once booming with factories and steel mills, is now watching jobs vanish and plants close. If China's factories keep growing while US factories shut down, Trump's key voters might lose faith in him. This change leaves a direct impact on our very survival. Losing manufacturing strength could weaken Trump's political base and spark unrest in communities hoping for a fresh start. This is more than just numbers. This shift has reshaped trade routes, weakened U.S. bargaining power, and created new centers of influence. For Trump, this industrial eclipse is more like a policy headache, or you can say a direct challenge to the MAGA doctrine. A future where "Made in America" becomes a nostalgic slogan, not a reality. China's key hit was on economic muscle and undermines promises that once inspired millions, such as MAGA's vow to bring jobs back home. But if China keeps growing its factories at this pace, how can America realistically compete? Part of China's unstoppable rise is tied to a massive global infrastructure push known as the Belt and Road Initiative. This ambitious project doesn't just build roads and ports, it expands supply chains and opens new markets across Asia, Africa, and Europe. At the same time, China is racing ahead with automation and robotics to beat rising labor costs. Factories are no longer just cheap labor hubs, but high-tech centers where machines and AI take over repetitive tasks, boosting productivity in ways that American plants often can't match. Then there's the delicate balance China tries to maintain with environmental policies. Unlike the old image of smog-choked factories, Beijing has begun pushing cleaner energy and stricter pollution controls, partly to meet global standards and partly to avoid the social unrest that heavy pollution can cause. But can China sustain this while pushing industrial growth at breakneck speed? What makes this even more marked is the contradiction on display. We hear speeches from Trump promising that steel mills will roar back to life. Yet, on the ground, factories in key Midwestern cities continue shutting their doors. Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. These states show real-time evidence of America's industrial decline. Why is China able to build new industrial parks while towns in the US struggle just to hold on to their last factories? What hidden forces and decisions led to this sharp contrast? Beneath the surface lie trade imbalances tolerated too long, corporate short-termism, and a blind belief that America's dominance was permanent. And the biggest question, if China becomes the world's factory, what does that mean for America's role on the global stage? Will it still be a manufacturing superpower, or is the era of American industrial dominance over? Beneath it all, a deeper uncertainty looms. Is China a threat to America's future, or is this the very world the US helped build? The answers to these questions could change everything about the future of work, economy, and power, both at home and around the world. Trump's worst-case scenario isn't just China rising. It's China rising while the US is stuck in neutral, arguing over policies while Beijing accelerates. If Beijing's plan goes ahead without opposition, it will not only surpass America's tech lead, but also break down the foundation of U.S. innovation, leaving Trump's administration trapped with no escape. The result of these steps is a powerful machine aiming not only to catch up, but to take the lead in global manufacturing and technology. This is the hidden engine behind China's rise, and why the future of global power is uncertain.
In 2015, the Chinese government set out an ambitious project called Made in China 2025. It wanted to move away from being the world's factory for low-cost goods to a global tech leader responsible for its own supply chain of cutting-edge tech.
China's government is not leaving its rise to chance. Made in China 2025 is a powerful plan to push China to the top of 10 critical industries. These include semiconductors, robotics, aerospace, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and biomedicine. The plan outlines 9 strategic tasks to drive this transformation, from strengthening industrial innovation and integrating tech with manufacturing to advancing green practices, building Chinese brands, and internationalizing their manufacturing reach. Each industry is carefully chosen for its future importance to global power and wealth. Progress reports show China has been hitting most of its goals.
Across 10 target technologies, the plan set out more than 250 mini-goals, and according to analysis from South China Morning Post, 86% of them have been ticked off. Some targets, like electric vehicles and renewable energy production, have far exceeded the targets.
This rapid execution shows the seriousness of their industrial drive. The plan demands that by 2025, China will produce at least 70% of the key technologies it uses. This means China wants to rely far less on foreign technology and suppliers. It's about being in full control. The phrase Beijing uses is techno-sovereignty, the power to control your own technology future without outside interference. Nowhere is this more evident than in China's aggressive push for semiconductor self-sufficiency. Here is another example of determination to master critical tech independently.
Huawei is a great example of this. In around 2019, it was top of the world in 5G equipment. It had a huge market share in mobile phones too. All of that took a major hit though when the US led widespread sanctions against the company, citing national security concerns around spying. Huawei's market share shrank, and it couldn't get the microchips it needed to keep innovating. But it pivoted into microchip manufacturing, and is now a major player in that too. In 2023, it released a phone with a microchip far beyond what the rest of the world thought was possible for the company or the country.
As US tech restrictions tighten, Beijing is doubling down, funneling billions into domestic chip design and fabrication. The goal? Cut dependence on foreign microchips, arguably the most critical tech battleground of the 21st century. What makes this plan especially concerning to the US government is how fast China is moving. Unlike many countries where businesses face long rules and slow approvals, China's companies get clear support. The state quickly backs them with money and resources. This support helps China's industries grow and innovate at lightning speed. A key driver of this acceleration is deep collaboration between the Chinese government, universities, and research institutes. These partnerships fast-track breakthroughs, aligning academic innovation with national priorities. It's not just policy, it's a tightly woven innovation ecosystem built for scale and speed. State-owned banks are a big part of this. They provide large loans to companies working in these industries, often at lower interest rates than private banks offer elsewhere. These loans help businesses invest in new technology, build factories, and hire skilled workers. Even more, China has created strong synergies between state-owned enterprises and private companies. Instead of competing, they often collaborate, combining state muscle with entrepreneurial agility. This model lets China use the government's control and the energy of private companies to push new technology forward, and this is only the first phase. Beijing has already laid out a broader vision extending beyond 2025. 2 more national plans are expected to follow, all aiming to make China the world's top manufacturing power by 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic. But what truly sets this plan apart isn't just ambition, it's how it contrasts with America's hands-off, fragmented approach to industrial growth. The real question is, how exactly is China moving so fast? The answer lies in a mix of talent and tactics that few are talking about. One of China's lesser-known but powerful strategies is the 1,000 Talents program. Launched in 2008, this initiative aims to attract top researchers, scientists, and entrepreneurs, especially those working abroad. with generous salaries, research funding, and access to cutting-edge facilities. Over its first decade, the program successfully brought in more than 7,000 individuals, including both foreign experts and Chinese professionals returning from overseas. For many, the combination of strong incentives and national prestige made it an appealing move.
What China has been moderately successful, at least, and some would say incredibly successful at doing, is using its sort of state-backed capitalism system, whereby the government really sets a research agenda, sets a funding agenda, bringing foreign researchers and enticing them to stay in China, or at least to give their innovations and ideas over to Chinese companies, requiring businesses from outside of China, oftentimes to set up joint ventures with Chinese ventures. These are all sort of tools that China has used to help achieve these ambitions.
This talent influx has allowed China to import not just people, but also cutting-edge knowledge and technical expertise critical to advancing its high-tech industries. At the same time, U.S. intelligence agencies have repeatedly accused China of stealing manufacturing secrets. Reports say hackers and spies have targeted American companies to get blueprints and designs for advanced technology. But why is this happening? Research and development costs are rising fast in the West. STEM, short for science, technology, engineering, and math, jobs are underfunded and often don't get enough attention. Meanwhile, China's state-backed programs offer better pay and more resources. This creates a strong pull for talent to leave their home countries for China's growing tech hubs. Experts warn this brain drain could slow innovation in the West while speeding it up in China. Imagine a future where America's own scientists fuel China's breakthroughs, a reversal of power that could take decades to undo. That's the real fear growing beneath Washington's rhetoric. Together, talent poaching and intellectual property theft form a powerful combo. They help China leapfrog years of research and development and gain an edge in high-tech industries. Understanding this hidden battle over ideas and people is crucial. It reveals a new dimension of the global competition that shapes the future of technology and power. After talent and tech, the point worth discussing is why this is so critical. Trump's tariffs risk isolating America from its closest allies just as global power shifts eastward. Meanwhile, the US and China continue to send conflicting messages about the status of trade talks, adding uncertainty to an already volatile situation.
President Trump's tariffs, and tonight the US and China sending conflicting messages over President Trump's tariffs, upending global markets and the US economy. After President Trump insisted the two sides were actively discussing tariffs, China calling it fake news, a Chinese official saying there have been no talks. Rachel Scott is at the White House.
Get along very well.
Tonight, China pushing back hard on a claim President Trump has been making for days, that negotiations to end the trade war are well underway.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active.
But tonight, China calling that, quote, fake news. A top Chinese official saying, quote, as far as I know, China and the United States have not held consultations or negotiations on the tariff issue.
This moment could break decades of strong partnerships, leaving a wider path for China's influence to expand. The once solid Western alliance now feels fragile. Tariffs have now become the newest weapon in a fierce economic fight. If Trump wins again, he promises a crushing 50% tariff on European goods, a replay of his aggressive 2018 strategy.
New tariffs on steel and aluminium imports to the US kicked in a few hours ago, now doubling to 50%. The struggling US steel industry is applauding this latest broadside from the Trump administration, but other sectors that rely on the metals are warning of price hikes everywhere, from car lots to grocery store shelves, although it's not entirely clear how or when the cost will be passed on to consumers.
This bold move aims to protect American jobs, but the risks are massive. On the other side, Europe is already on high alert. Alarmed by Trump's plan, the European Union has maintained its top trade team and sent urgent representatives to Washington.
Meanwhile, the Trump team has asked all countries that trade with the US to submit trade proposals by the end of today. The White House called the letter that went out a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up.
Their mission is clear: stop a trade war before it spirals out of control. Behind closed doors, tension is thick as Europe decides how to respond, knowing that any mistake could have dire consequences. But there's another layer to this gamble. Tariffs don't just hit foreign exporters. They often raise prices for American consumers too. Higher costs on imported goods can feed directly into inflation, putting more pressure on households already struggling with rising living costs. This could blunt the political payoff Trump hopes to gain from a Buy American agenda. But beyond the economic fallout at home, the tension with China adds another complicated layer. Here's how both sides are getting tough in this growing trade dispute.
I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice.
But China's response to the United States wasn't quite as nice.
Saying they want to reach an agreement with China while continuing to apply maximum pressure is not the right way to deal with China, and it will not work.
Meanwhile, global markets are watching nervously. The threat of a major trade disruption sends shockwaves through stock exchanges, rattling investor confidence. Volatility is already climbing as traders brace for what could become a full-scale economic confrontation. Businesses that rely on stable international supply chains are especially vulnerable, and retaliation is almost certain. European leaders are quietly preparing countermeasures, from strategic tariffs on U.S. exports to tightening investment restrictions. Other trading partners may follow suit, crafting policies that could limit American access to vital overseas markets. The ripple effects could reach deep into American agriculture, tech, and automotive industries, sectors heavily reliant on global trade. One misstep could push key companions away and weaken America's global standing. And with every ally the U.S. loses, China gains a foothold not just in trade, but in rewriting the global rulebook to its favor. Trump's tariffs could protect U.S. industries or drive partners straight into China's expanding trade network. The stakes have never been higher, and the world is watching closely. But make no mistake, this gamble risks isolating the U.S. at a moment when China's plan is already tightening its noose. Every ally turned away chips away at Trump's ability to counter Beijing's silent economic siege. What happens next could change the rules of global trade forever. The U.S. is on the brink of a manufacturing boom. Experts predict nearly 3.8 million new factory jobs could open by 2033. But here's the catch. Almost half of those jobs, about 1.9 million, might go unfilled. This looming gap isn't just a number. It's a real threat to America's economic comeback.
We have a labor shortage. We have very low participation rates in the U.S. economy and the labor market, as reflected by the fact that we're several million workers south of where we were when this great pandemic recession started.
Why is this happening? For one, the workforce is getting older fast. Many skilled workers are retiring, and younger generations aren't stepping in to replace them. Vocational training programs are shrinking, leaving fewer people ready to fill these vital roles. A decades-long decline in trade school enrollment, paired with cultural attitudes that view factory work as second class, has left America struggling to replace retiring skilled labor. Immigration policy adds more complexity. Tighter restrictions over the past decade have choked off one of the key sources of industrial labor. Immigrants, who have long filled critical manufacturing roles, are now arriving in lower numbers, straining an already shrinking labor pool. This labor shortage creates a huge political dilemma. Trump's America First plan depends on bringing manufacturing jobs back to U.S. soil. But even if factories reopen, they can't run without enough skilled workers. It's a problem that slogans alone can't fix. The heart of the issue is finding real people willing to build the future. In response, some companies are turning to automation and artificial intelligence as a partial fix. Automation offers relief, but it still requires skilled workers to design, program, and maintain the systems. So far, technology can soften the blow, but it can't completely replace human labor. Could America's reshoring dreams fall apart because of this missing workforce? Or will the government and industries find new ways to attract and train workers before it's too late? As factories wait for workers, China tightens its grip on a resource that could decide the fate of future technology and global power. Rare earth elements might sound obscure, but they are the backbone of everything from electric vehicles and smartphones to advanced military tech. Without these minerals, many modern industries would grind to a halt. China still processes around 90% of global rare earths and mines, roughly 69%, a dominance built through decades of investment in extraction, refining, and export control. America and most allies are rushing to scale up, but the gap remains wide, and China's leverage isn't fading, it's evolving. The stakes skyrocketed again in early 2025, when China imposed fresh restrictions on key materials like gallium, graphite, and rare earth magnets. These moves jolted global markets, triggering panic as industries scrambled for workarounds. It's strategic pressure, an economic weapon wielded without firing a shot.
China now introduced these new export control measures. Exports from China reduced significantly, and this is putting a heavy burden on companies all across the globe.
If Trump's next move triggers deeper sanctions or retaliation, China's control over these rare elements could become a pressure valve. one twist away from throttling U.S. innovation. For the United States, this is a major weak spot. The country lacks the mining and processing infrastructure to compete, creating a ticking time bomb for national security and tech innovation. Just how bad is it? Without key U.S. mines, we're staring down total reliance on China for the materials that power everything from EVs to MRIs.
This is a critical issue, not just for the United States, but for the world. China produces 100% of the heavy rare earths that we all need in the world today. We need that for Department of Defense applications. We need that for EVs. We need that for wind turbines. We need it for robotics. Any rare earth permanent magnet that needs a higher temperature needs to have the heavy rare earths, either dysprosium or terbium. There's one producer of that in the world today, and so that's why I make the comment that China holds all of the cards.
China's rare earth dominance is a silent but powerful lever of influence, reforming the global inventory system and threatening to leave America in the dust. This is more than a resource battle. It's a test of who will control the technology that defines the future. The battle between the US and China is not just about factories or trade. It's a clash of industrial philosophies, each shaping the future of global power. China's model is striking in its clarity and force. It relies on centralized control, where the government calls the shots and plans decades ahead. State capitalism here is on steroids, pouring seemingly endless resources into targeted industries like semiconductors, electric vehicles, and robotics. This long-term vision allows China to build entire sectors rapidly, often in just a decade. No distractions, no red tape, just relentless momentum. The result is an industrial machine that moves fast, backed by deep pockets and unwavering focus. Across the Pacific, America's model is different and more complex. Innovation is decentralized, driven by the private sector's creativity and competition. This approach has led to incredible breakthroughs, especially in technology and services. Yet, the U.S. faces its own hurdles. Political gridlock and shifting policies create uncertainty, slowing down big industrial moves. Funding ebbs and flows, and strategic priorities can change with each administration. This inconsistency fragments efforts to build the same industries that China is racing ahead in. Without a unified plan, industries often grow in pockets, but lack a national strategy. The result is stark. China doesn't just plan industries, it builds them fast. The US debates, delays, and sometimes lets opportunity slip away. Where China erects factories and dominates markets within 10 years, the US often lingers in discussion for 2 decades or more. This difference is not just about economics, it reshapes the global balance of power. Who will lead the future? The answer lies in how each nation adapts to the challenges ahead. Global delivery systems are undergoing shifts, but one reality remains unshaken. China remains at the center. Major corporations such as Apple, Tesla, and Intel continue to depend heavily on Chinese factories and suppliers. Even as firms explore alternatives, China's grip remains firm, built on decades of investment in scale and efficiency. And here's the danger. China doesn't need to control every product, just the right choke points. A single export restriction could freeze entire industries in the West. The popular strategy called China Plus One suggests companies can reduce risk by adding a secondary production site outside China. Countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico often come up as options, yet these alternatives face significant limitations. They lack China's advanced infrastructure, skilled labor force, and manufacturing ecosystems built over decades. Scaling complex product flow in these countries is slower, more expensive, and riskier, making true diversification a distant goal for many companies. Even with growing efforts from the US and European Union to build friendshoring partnerships aligning with trusted allies to create safer supply lines, the reality is complex. Many raw materials, parts, and components still flow through China, creating hidden dependencies. Fully cutting ties with China would cause huge economic chaos and raise prices worldwide, but staying dependent shifts global power toward China. Other countries must quickly boost their own industries to compete. Who controls the supply chains controls the pace of innovation and the direction of global power. How this plays out will shape the future of global trade and power. This is Trump's worst nightmare made real. A rising China with a master plan to not only win the trade war, but to reform global power in ways that could leave America sidelined, its industries hollowed out, and the MAGA movement defeated. But the question keeps rising. Could this trade war mark the start of a new economic order? What risks are we willing to take to protect American jobs? And is there still room for a deal that benefits both sides? Can Trump fight back, or is this the end of an era? a new world order where America no longer leads. The battle for America's future has just begun.